Greetings and welcome to an unboxing video for the Cooler Master MasterBox Q300L Micro ATX case. Let's begin with some background information on this case. As I mentioned earlier on, the Q300L is a Micro ATX PC case, and one thing to note is that I've always been a big fan of Cooler Master, as in my opinion, they do produce pretty decent cases at affordable prices. In this instance, the Q300L, I bought it for 59 Singapore dollars, and that translates into approximately 43 US dollars for you overseas viewers. Let's have a look at the sides of the box so that we can take a closer look at the specs for this case. Okay, here we go. So dimensions are as such: 387 by 230 by 381 mm. Like I mentioned, motherboard type supported, Micro ATX and Mini ITX if for whatever reason you choose to install a Mini ITX board into this case. The case comes with plenty of fan support, so fans at the front, the top, the rear and the bottom, mostly for 120mm fans, you can see it here. It also does come with liquid cooling support as well to mount your radiators and so on. One thing to note about the Q300L is that the PSU is mounted at the bottom, which is pretty much in line with the design of PC cases nowadays. And here's some data on the maximum length for PSU, for graphics cards, and your CPU cooler height. One thing I'd like to mention as well is that the Q300L comes with an acrylic side panel, which we'll take a closer look at later on in the video. And this Q300L does include a single 120mm fan pre-installed. Do note that this 120mm fan is the plain Jane variety. There's no LEDs, no RGB whatsoever. Okay, let's take a closer look at the case itself. Right, now that we've got the case out of the box, time for some first impressions. I must say, with the design of the Q300L, this represents sort of like an evolution in terms of Cooler Master's design language, especially if you compare it to the other models in the Cooler Master lineup at roughly the same price point, such as models from the Elite series and so on. Following the trend with case manufacturers nowadays, you'll notice that the Q300L does not come with an optical drive bay at all. The front fascia has this very interesting geometric pattern, where upon closer inspection, you realize that it's also a removable filter for the front mounted fans, like so. So you can just remove it and it's secured in place by magnetic strips on the back. Now, one thing to note is that, in my own personal opinion, I think these magnetic strips are rather weak. And if you just take a look, if I were to reattach it back to the front panel, if I were to just swipe my hand as such, it just comes off. So, not exactly sure if this is a design flaw as such, but it is something to take note of. The same treatment also applies to the top of the case, where as you can see, the Q300L has the same kind of removable filter as the front fascia. It's also held in place by the same kind of magnetic strips that are pretty weak, like I mentioned earlier on. So whether or not it's a good or bad thing, I would say it's rather subjective, but on the plus point, it does make removing and washing these filters very easy. Moving over to the side with the acrylic see-through panel, you see that it's held in place by 4 thumb screws, and that the I/O panel is actually located on the side over here. Now you get your usual 2 USB 3.0 ports, your power switch, your audio jacks, as well as a reset button. One interesting feature about this case is the modularity of the said I/O panel, where you have the ability to relocate it to either here or over here depending on your own personal preference, which is a nice touch. Apart from that, I do wish that Cooler Master had included tempered glass instead of an acrylic panel with this case, as I think that it would make the case a little bit more premium in terms of its appearance as well as features. Shifting our focus now to the other side panel, we see that Cooler Master has secured the panel in place with screws that also double up as rubber feet. This is so that you can lay the case on its side, like so, as a permanent placement position should you choose to do so. Not bad. Let's now shift our attention to the innards of the case. As you can see, it's quite spacious on the inside. You've got two places for you to mount your 2.5-inch drive, so one is over here and the other over here. Do note that if you like to install a 3.5-inch hard disk, you'll have to go to the back of the case, where you can see that the mounting position is right here. The case also does come with a couple of openings for you to do some cable management when you've got your power supply unit, your motherboard installed. We'll take a closer look at how it fares in terms of the cable management department once I get a motherboard and a power supply installed. But for most purposes, the case does look rather spacious and adequate for a typical build. Let's take a closer look at the insides of the case, starting first with the connectors. You've got your usual HD audio connector over here, your front panel connector for power switch, reset switch and the like, and finally your front USB 3.0 connector. Pretty standard stuff. And over here I believe is a space for you to mount a 120mm fan, though you might want to take note it's right next to the space where you'll be installing a power supply unit. So especially if you've got a non-modular power supply installed, the cables might get in the way of the fan blades. I'm not entirely sure about that, but we'll see. Over to your right is the space behind the front panel where you can mount a 240mm radiator if you have a water cooling setup installed. Otherwise, you can mount two 140mm fans or two 120mm fans just fine. Moving over to the top, that's space for you to install two 120mm fans, and over to the left is the 120mm fan that Cooler Master has included together with the Q300L case. Yeah, so all in all, it looks like this case is pretty spacious on the inside. And I think what I'll do now is that I'll put together the components that are intended to go together with this case. It's actually for a build that I'm putting together for a friend of mine, and we'll see how the Q300L fares once all the components have been installed. After an hour or so of tinkering, here it is, a complete PC build using the Cooler Master Q300L case. In summary, it's great. As you can see, I managed to do some form of cable management over here where I've pretty much hidden the cables on the other side of the case. So I'm talking about the power supply cables, the SATA cables, the front panel cables, and yeah, not too shabby looking I must say. And even with the power supply installed, you've got space to mount your 120mm fan, but you might want to do so a little bit closer to the right, I suppose, because it might still get in the way of these cables over here. But that aside, one more thing to add is that it's a pity really that the non-modular PSU that I have here, the Cooler Master MWE500, the cables are not sleeved and not solid black in color, where as a result, it sort of disrupts the overall interior aesthetic of the PC. But other than that, I would say that the Q300L does permit a clean-ish looking build quite easily, even if you have a non-modular PSU. Okay, let's have a look at the other side of the case. Over on the other side of the case, you'll see that there is plenty of space for you to stuff and hide your cables that you've routed through the gaps over here. So as you can see, I've pretty much put most of the PSU cables in a bunch above the hard drive and tied it up so that it stays in place. And your hard drive is here. I would say there's still quite a lot of breathing room around the back of the case. So all in all, it looks like the Q300L has absolutely no problems whatsoever with cable management, even if you have a non-modular PSU installed. So it's really great, it's spacious. I think that this is really a great case to have. To sum up, I think that the Q300L by Cooler Master is a great looking and spacious micro ATX case that is well suited for a budget or mid-range PC build. Though personally, I think that more work could be done, especially with regard to the removable front and top filters where, as you could have seen from the video, they're not very sturdy in terms of the way that they're attached to the case. The Q300L, in all honesty, is still a case that I would use again in the future. Alright, so that sums up this video. Thanks very much for watching. Do like the video if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys again soon in the future. Take care.